11 o'clock.
Oh,
I was going to do it last night, but it just didn't work out that
sure. I have a list of questions for you, and I'll try to get through them as quick as I can. As I said, I've got my kids here with me. My wife
Where are they
ended
now?
up working. Well, one of my
Yeah, they're
co-hosts is with me, and he's actually outside with them. They're just
wow.
playing around. So they're little, 10 and 7 actually. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with them today. But I was going to break this into 2 parts with you. One, the episode that I was working on right now was about Stan Friedman, and I wanted to just ask a few questions about him if I could. And then second were some questions more directed at you. I'll start at the same point that I had actually ended with her, though. One thing that's very, very interesting to me is the whole local aspect of this. The fact that you guys are Virginia, you guys aren't, from New Mexico or Canada or wherever.
Right,
You're
right.
local. You're right in our backyard.
Everybody's got to be somewhere.
Yes, of course. But I think that there's this misperception that goes on, especially maybe in this area, where people don't think that these kinds of things happen around here, or that people that are interested in it are, live around here or work around here or anything. And I think that that's very valuable. And in the course of doing the show and dealing with some of these different people, some of whom you know, like Friedman, I know you've worked with before, it'd be a great opportunity to have somebody that can kind of jump in every now and then and maybe give a few comments, and I'd love to be able to reach out to you on a sort of consistent basis.
Yeah, sure
to speak to you about some of this. So that would
I'm
really
always
be great.
available for wherever I can help.
Oh, sure. No, I really appreciate that. I know that you've worked with Friedman on there was a Roswell oral history project is what you would refer to it as.
That was back in about 1990.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. And I assume you've spoken with him at several different conferences.
Oh, yeah, I see Stan a lot.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But just on a very general sense, what can you tell me about him? I mean, I haven't had the chance to meet him in person. I'm actually interviewing him later today.
Yeah,
by
that's
phone.
amazing. Yeah, you can tell him I said hello.
Sure, I'll do that.
Stan's a very good friend of mine, and I do speak with him on a regular basis, and I find him he is an outgoing fellow,
Sure.
Certainly very knowledgeable.
He seems like, yeah, sure.
He's very dedicated to pushing the fact that there's something going on with UFOs. He has a very definite opinion on what they are,
Sure.
ET visitors, and I don't quite go that far, but that's my opinion that
Right.
they are, but he
Right.
goes out there and states it as
Sure.
fact.
Sure.
And he's, at least for the person who maybe hasn't had a huge exposure to the field, he's a good starting point to listen to.
Sure.
And I know that one of the things I remember best about Stanley before I ever knew him, when I was still in college, my mom one day told me that she was going to see a UFO speaker at a local community college, Keystone Junior College in Pennsylvania, and it turned out that Stan was the speaker. And I obviously knew of him at that time, but had never seen him. And 73, 74 time period. And I came back. She went and saw the thing, and she said, "Oh, it was just great. And this man knew everything about UFOs. He addressed it very rationally. He came across very well. Had answers. Could answer questions. This and that and the other thing." And prior to that, I was very interested in the subject. But my dad was kind of very, very cool to the subject of UFOs. Oh, there's nothing there. It's like, what does my kid know? There's nothing wrong with this subject.
Sure.
Yeah, he sort of he tolerated it. So what an amusing thing. My kid's interested in flying
Right.
saucers. Blah blah blah. Well, of course, then I was going to college, but we hardly ever spoke about it. He's not alive anymore. But he apparently went with my mom to see Stan. When I came back, he said, "Oh man, there's something going on with UFOs. Something's
Just
going on
completely
there."
converted.
Yeah, he completely
Wow.
changed it. He said, "Boy, I saw this fellow speak. He's a scientist, a physicist. Man, he really knows what's going on." People asked him questions. He was able to cite authorities and answer them all. My dad was an engineer, so he always thought along the same kind of lines,
Speaking the same language.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
Yeah.
And he'd never seen that before,
Right.
vis-a-vis the UFO phenomenon. And it didn't change too much over the intervening years. We never spoke about it much, but he never put it down after that.
Oh.
But whereas before he would just say whatever he didn't study the subject, but he would whatever he'd heard people say on TV or whatever, oh, it's just shooting stars or
Right,
it's
right.
birds or whatever. Like he'd say something like, "That's a lens flare in that picture." We were trying to kid, you know.
Right.
Like after Stan, like he never really said anything. He just
That's pretty
changed his
interesting.
mind.
Now, see, without going into a big thing about the show that we're doing somewhat the same thing in the way that your dad would have related to this. I think that we're trying to do a little bit more of a grassroots, almost a Jeff Peckman type of an approach, where we're just trying to get out on the street and have that same conversation with what you might call regular people. My co-host, who's with me, as a matter of fact, really before I started on this project, had almost no opinion on the subject, much less any sort of, understanding of it or knowledge of the cases or anything like that. But something about it, as we've worked together for the past few months, he's slowly kind of come around and is at least willing to listen.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a huge step in the right direction. And I think as a group, if we can continue to have that effect on sort of a general audience, I think it's going to make a big difference in the long run.
Yeah, well, all I ask for with the people that I talk with or folks that I address or something is have an open mind. I don't want to talk to someone whose mind is just made up.
Right.
Actually, I won't talk to a person like that very long because there's nothing I can say that will
Right,
convince that,
right.
that person.
You're almost
that,
both wasting your
yeah,
time. Yeah,
it's just
sure.
be objective and just admit that if you don't know something, you don't
That
know.
you don't know.
Don't make up an explanation for which there's no
Right.
support.
Right.
Or make up a more ridiculous explanation than the fact that maybe we're dealing with ET visitors. It's to make up some crazy convoluted theory that involves psychology or psychosocial interactions or something where that is more far-fetched than just simple ET visitors is ridiculous.
Right.
And I just have no patience with closed-minded types. I want skepticism. I want honest skepticism.
Sure.
And I don't want so open-minded they believe everything.
Right.
Every light they see in the sky
Exactly,
is a
right.
spaceship or anything like
Right.
that. That's ridiculous as well.
Right. I don't know.
You see a lot of both those things.
You do.
Unfortunately.
You do. Right.
Yeah, but people sometimes you wouldn't think should be thinking like that. I have a friend of mine who's he's a physicist. He's a PhD physicist, and he's kind of active in. Well, he was more active in the UFO subject. When it comes to magnetohydrodynamics, which I think is his area of specialty, some esoteric area of physics, he gets paid for that. He can do the math. He can understand it. He's very conversant. When it comes to UFOs, he's so open-minded about it, like he loses his scientific training. He forgets what it is to be a scientist. He doesn't apply the rational thought. He's immediately so far out there with, he knows what's going on,
Right.
he knows where they come from, he knows how long they've been here. he
What do
knows
you
the-
attribute that to?
I have absolutely no idea. For the life of me, I've known
I mean,
him for a long
I
time.
know I'm going to keep coming back to that question over and over with guests, time and time again. I'm blown away by that. I don't understand why people do that.
He's got a weird dichotomy in his nature where when he has to, he can be completely scientific and
Right.
do the job.
Right.
Work for a government agency or a contractor and does scientific
On
work.
extremely complicated
Exactly right.
PhD level work.
Exactly right, and he is a PhD, exactly right. But then it comes to other stuff that people who aren't PhDs are saying to him, hey, what are you coming off with that? There's no evidence for that.
Right,
Look,
right.
And, oh, yes there is, but there isn't. And it completely mystified me.
I mean, do you think it's just some sort of overwhelming desire to believe, or?
I would think that would have to be a huge
I know I'm
part of
trying to
it.
get you to practically read his mind at this point, but in general.
I saw him a couple months ago in August and hadn't seen him for 6-7 years at the MUFON symposium, and he hadn't changed one iota. And he was arguing on the so-called face on Mars.
Right.
And I said,
right.
No matter how you look at that, the original face on Mars, it's nothing.
The Viking photos.
The Viking
original ones,
photos,
right.
yeah, they've rephotographed them with several probes,
Right.
including lately, and with some of the latest ones. And it's just the features. It's just a series of hills
Right.
and rills on the Martian surface.
Right. A few shadows, and the next thing you know.
Not there.
Right.
I mean, just admit it.
Right.
You're not looking at that right. You're not missing. You're missing the big picture. Yeah, he's no effect whatsoever.
That's incredible. That's incredible. On Friedman, just really one other main thing. The MJ-12 stuff. I've heard interviews with you before where you've commented on Roswell, but I haven't heard you say much about the Majestic 12 stuff. Do you?
Yeah.
What's your, I don't know, take?
Yeah, my take
so
on
to
that.
speak, on
MJ-12.
or for that matter, Friedman's work on it.
Well, Stan has done the best work of anyone probably, in the sense that he's gone out to the archives, he's gone through the documents, he's
Right.
spoken to as many of the people as he can who are involved with this or were involved with whatever MJ-12 might be.
Right.
And he's spoken to people who flew the planes of the people on the
Yes.
MJ-12 list. He's spoken to their widows and children. He's gone to the Truman Library. And I have to respect what he says, because he does approach things with an empirical mind as much as he can. And I'm still, in my own opinion, I don't throw them out the door. I don't throw them away like most of the UFO field. Even a lot of my very good friends in the field no longer think that there's anything to the MJ-12 documents, that they're hoaxes. They know that they're hoaxes. And Stan, to be honest with you, is one of the few people who's still among the top crust of UFO researchers, still thinks that they're by and large legitimate documents. And I'm still on the fence about them. I cannot prove that they're hoaxes.
Right.
I cannot prove that they're valid as to what they claim to be. But the important thing is I can't prove they're hoaxes.
Right.
And no one ever has stepped up to really say, I hoaxed the MJ-12
Right.
documents.
Right.
And Stan has found a lot of really amazing consistencies between the people who were on the list of the MJ-12 people and what they were doing at certain times in their lives, where
I
they
thought
were
that
alleged
was-
to have been meeting and
Right. Right. I read his book. I have a copy of it at home,
Yeah.
and I was fascinated by that. That was one of the things that really got my attention. Was the work on the people and those connections
Yeah.
and who they turned out to be.
and he's found things that just historians in general didn't know about some of these people. So you have to ask yourself then, if somebody, let's just say for the sake of argument that it was Bill Moore, though I don't know who, if someone hoaxed him, I don't know who it was, but let's just say it was Bill Moore, because
Sure.
he was one of the persons who came out with them originally.
Right.
Introduced them. Let's say Bill Moore concocted this. So Bill Moore would have had to do all the research, basically, Stan did.
To get it right.
To get it right.
That's correct.
In secret, and to my knowledge, Stan never went to a library or an archive and somebody said to him, oh, that's funny, you're in here looking at that. 2 months ago, another guy was in here
Right.
asking all about that same stuff. He was
Right.
going through those same files. And, well, what did he look like? Well, he had a beard and he was brown hair, you know, so it's, 5'8" or whatever.
Sure.
And matched Bill Moore's description. Never have you heard anything,
Right.
heard anything like that.
Right.
So how did somebody hoax them without
Right.
doing that?
Right.
I mean, it's easy to say. It's so easy to say. It's just a hoax. There's misspelled words. Certain things about the MJ-12 documents, even I have to admit, like the Del Rio crash that's referred to in the briefing document. People who have independently looked into that